The stars looked cold and distant through the bridge windows of the warship. Sovereign's Pride. Commander Zaraketh stood with her hands behind her back, watching the empty space ahead. Her dark blue skin showed the ritual scars of her warrior rank, each line carved deep when she earned her place in the Dominion fleet. The scars hurt when they were fresh, but now they were just part of who she was. "Commander, we have something on sensors," said her second officer. Lieutenant Veltar was young but followed orders well. That was what mattered in the Dominion fleet. Zaraketh walked to the sensor station. The screen showed a small ship moving fast through their patrol zone. It was trying to hide behind an asteroid field, but Dominion sensors were too good for such tricks. "What type of vessel?" "Human design, Commander." "Looks like a cargo ship, but the energy readings are wrong. They have modified engines." Zaraketh felt her jaw tighten. Humans again. These young creatures had been nothing but trouble since first contact. They refused to join the Dominion like other smart species did. Instead, they fought back and caused problems across the outer systems. "Signal the squadron. We intercept." The hunt began quickly. 3 Dominion warships moved to surround the human vessel. It was a standard operation that Zaraketh had done hundreds of times before. Most species surrendered when they saw Dominion ships. The smart ones did not even try to run, but this human ship did try to run. "They are increasing speed," reported Veltar, moving toward the asteroid field. "Follow them," Zaraketh ordered. She watched the human ship weave between the floating rocks. The pilot was good, she had to admit. Most species would have crashed by now. "Target their engines, disable only." The weapons officer fired carefully. Blue energy bolts reached out and struck the human ship. One engine went dark, then another. The ship spun out of control and crashed into a large asteroid. "Life signs?" asked Zaraketh. 3 humans still alive, Commander." "No serious injuries?" Zaraketh nodded. The Dominion needed prisoners for questioning, not bodies. "Prepare a boarding party." "I will lead it myself." 20 minutes later, she stepped through the airlock onto the human ship. The air smelled different. From what she was used to, not bad, just strange. Her soldiers spread out to secure the vessel while she walked toward the bridge. She found the 3 humans waiting for her. 2 were young, maybe 20 cycles old in human years. They looked scared and held their hands up in surrender. But the third one was different. He was older, with gray hair and calm eyes. He sat in the captain's chair and watched her enter without fear. When he saw her, he stood up slowly and gave a small bow. "Commander," he said in good Dominion standard. "I am Captain Jake Morrison. Welcome aboard my ship." Zaraketh stared at him. "Most prisoners begged or cried or tried to fight." This human acted like he was greeting a guest. "You are under arrest for illegal entry into Dominion space?" "I understand," Morrison said. He looked at her scars, then at her rank symbols. "You have seen many battles, Commander." "Those are warrior marks, are they not?" The question surprised her. Prisoners did not usually ask about Cathari culture. "Yes, each scar represents a victory. Each scar represents service to the Dominion." Zaraketh felt annoyed. Why was this human asking personal questions? "You will be taken to a detention facility for processing." Morrison nodded as if this was perfectly reasonable. "May I ask what happens to my crew?" "They will be processed." "As well? And after processing?" Zaraketh looked at him more carefully. His voice was steady and his hands did not shake. Most prisoners wanted to know about processing because they were afraid. This human seemed genuinely curious. "That depends on many factors, such as your crimes, your value as sources of information, your willingness to cooperate with Dominion authority." Morrison smiled slightly. "I see. And if we are not valuable or cooperative?" Zaraketh did not answer. They both knew what happened to useless prisoners. "Commander," one of her soldiers called, "we found the cargo hold." She left Morrison with 2 guards and went to see what the humans had been smuggling. The cargo hold was full of medical supplies, food packets, and farming equipment. Nothing illegal by itself, but the destination tags showed they were headed for human colonies in disputed space. "Relief supplies?" Morrison said when she returned to the bridge. He had somehow heard their conversation through the ship's communication system. For refugees. Refugees from what? From the last Dominion pacification mission in the Kepler system. Your forces were very thorough, Commander. They left many people with nothing. Zaraketh felt a small flash of anger. Dominion forces do not target civilians. Morrison looked at her for a long moment. Have you ever been to a world after a pacification mission, Commander? I have participated in many such operations. That is not what I asked. Morrison's voice was still calm, but something in his eyes had changed. Have you ever gone back to see what happened after your ships left? The question bothered her, though she could not say why. The aftermath of military operations is not my concern. I follow orders and complete missions. Of course, Morrison sighed. You are a good soldier. Something in the way he said good soldier made it sound almost like an insult. Zaraketh felt her temper rise. I am an excellent soldier. I have served the Dominion for 37 cycles without question or failure. 37 cycles, Morrison repeated. That is a long time to serve without questions. A soldier does not need questions. A soldier needs orders and the skill to carry them out. Morrison tilted his head slightly. And if the orders are wrong? The question hit Zaraketh like a physical blow. In all her years of service, no one had ever suggested that Dominion orders could be wrong. The idea was not just forbidden, it was impossible to think. Orders come from High Command, she said. High Command serves the Dominion. The Dominion brings order to the galaxy. I see, Morrison said. And who decided that the galaxy needed the Dominion's order? Zaraketh opened her mouth to answer, then realized she did not know. It had always been that way. The Dominion existed to bring order. Order was good. Therefore the Dominion was good. She had never thought about it any other way. Take them to the detention cells, she ordered her soldiers. Standard security protocols. As her soldiers led the prisoners away, Morrison looked back at her. Thank you for the conversation, Commander. I hope we can continue it later. After they were gone, Zaraketh stood alone on the human bridge. The ship was quiet now except for the sound of her soldiers searching the remaining compartments. She looked out through the small viewport at her own warship. For 37 cycles, she had served without questions. It had always been enough. Orders came down, she carried them out, missions were completed. That was what soldiers did, but now, for the first time in her life, she found herself wondering about things she had never wondered about before. Why did the galaxy need Dominion order? Who had decided that? And why did the idea of asking these questions feel so dangerous? She shook her head and walked back to her own ship. She was a Cathari warrior. She did not have time for dangerous thoughts. 3 days passed before Zaraketh went to see the human prisoner again. She told herself it was routine. All prisoners needed regular interrogation to gather useful information. The fact that she kept thinking about Morrison's questions had nothing to do with it. The detention level of the Sovereign's Pride was cold and gray. Everything was designed to make prisoners feel small and hopeless. Zaraketh walked past the cells holding Morrison's 2 crew members. They sat quietly on their bunks, staring at nothing. They looked like most prisoners after a few days in Dominion. Custody. Morrison was different. He sat cross-legged on his bunk, eyes closed, breathing slowly. When she stopped at his cell, he opened his eyes and smiled. Commander Zaraketh, he said. Thank you for coming to visit. She touched the control panel and the energy barrier flickered off. 2 guards flanked her as she entered the cell. This is not a visit, this is interrogation. Of course, Morrison said. He did not stand up or show any sign of fear. What would you like to know? Zaraketh had prepared a list of standard questions about human military positions, supply routes, and colony defenses. Instead, she found herself asking, Why do you fight the Dominion? Morrison looked surprised. That is not what I expected you to ask, answered the question. We fight because we want to be free. Free from what? Morrison gestured around the cell. From this. From being told how to live, what to believe, where we can go. From having our children taken away to be raised as Dominion citizens. from watching our cultures disappear. The Dominion preserves useful cultural elements, Zaraketh said. This was what she had been taught. Primitive practices are eliminated for the good of all. Who decides what is primitive? Another question without an easy answer. Zaraketh felt frustrated. High Command makes such decisions based on extensive study. Have you read these studies? She had not. Such documents were far above her security level. That is not my responsibility, Morrison nodded. I understand. You trust that others have made the right choices. Yes, do you know what happened to my homeworld, Commander? Zaraketh checked her datapad. Earth colony designation Harmony. Pacified 14 cycles ago after refusing Dominion integration. Pacified, Morrison repeated. That is an interesting word. Would you like to know what pacification looked like from our perspective? Something in his voice made her uncomfortable, but she nodded. Morrison stood up slowly and walked to the small window in his cell. Harmony was a farming world. 2 million people, mostly families who wanted to live simply and grow food. When the Dominion arrived, they offered us membership, protection in exchange for obedience, standard integration protocols. We said no. We had our own government, our own laws. We were not bothering anyone. Morrison looked back at her. 3 days later, your ships returned. Zaraketh knew what came next. Worlds that refused integration were given one more chance to reconsider. If they still refused, military action followed. They targeted our capital first, Morrison continued. Then our spaceports, then our factories. They said they were only hitting military targets. Dominion forces follow strict rules of engagement. The hospital where my wife worked was not a military target, Commander. Neither was the school where my daughter studied. Neither were the refugee camps where people went to hide. Zaraketh felt something cold in her stomach. Civilian casualties sometimes occur in military operations. This is regrettable but unavoidable. Morrison turned to face her directly. Regrettable but unavoidable. Is that what you wrote in your reports about the other worlds you helped pacify? I follow orders and complete missions. Yes, you said that before. But have you ever wondered? What happens to the people on those worlds after your ships leave? The question bothered her more than it should have. Reconstruction begins immediately. Dominion aid helps rebuild infrastructure. For those who survive. Morrison walked back to his bunk and sat down. His movements were calm, but she could see pain in his eyes now. Would you like to know how many people from Harmony survived pacification, Commander? Zaraketh did not want to know, but she nodded anyway. 43,000. Out of 2 million. Morrison's voice was still calm, but each word hit her like a weapon. My wife and daughter were not among them. The cold feeling in Zaraketh's stomach got worse. Resistance casualties were higher than expected. Harmony forces fought longer than anticipated. Harmony had no military forces, Commander. We were farmers and teachers and shopkeepers. The resistance you speak of was people trying to protect their families. Zaraketh stood up abruptly. This interrogation is complete. Commander, may I ask you something? She should have left, but something made her stop. What? In your 37 cycles of service, how many worlds have you helped pacify? That information is classified. I am not asking for exact numbers, just an estimate. Zaraketh thought about it. Dozens of operations. Maybe 100 worlds over her entire career. Many worlds. And in all that time, did you ever ask what happened to the survivors? She had not. After each operation, her ship moved on to the next mission. What happened to pacified worlds was not her concern. Reconstruction is handled by civilian administrators. Of course, Morrison said. You complete your missions and move on. Clean and simple. Something in his tone made her angry. The Dominion brings order to chaotic systems. Without order, there is only suffering. Is that what you believe, or what you were taught to believe? Another impossible question. Zaraketh had been raised from birth to serve the Dominion. Her beliefs and her training were the same thing. Both, Morrison nodded as if this made perfect sense. Commander, may I tell you about something I saw once? She should have left, but she was curious despite herself. What? I was on a trading mission to the Vega system 5 cycles ago. We stopped at a space station for supplies. There was a Cathari merchant there, older than you. She had the same warrior scars. Zarakith wondered where this story was going. She was selling artifacts from her homeworld. Beautiful things. Carved stones, woven fabrics, musical instruments. When I asked her about them, she started to cry. Cathari do not cry. This one did. She told me these were the last pieces of old Cathari culture. Everything else was gone, absorbed into standard Dominion practices. She said she was the only one left who remembered the old songs. Zarakith felt something strange in her chest. Old ways were primitive. Modern Cathari are stronger and more efficient. Are they happier? She opened her mouth to say yes, then realized she had never thought about it. Happiness was not something Cathari warriors were supposed to consider. They had duty, they had service. That was enough. Happiness is not relevant to military efficiency. Morrison looked sad. No, I suppose it is not. He was quiet for a moment, then asked, Commander, do you remember anything from before you joined the military? I was raised in military schools from age 5. There was no before. Nothing? No family traditions? No stories? No songs? Zarakith tried to remember. There were vague images of her birth parents, but they had given her to the state when she was very young. That was normal for warrior caste families. No, I am sorry, Morrison said, and he sounded like he meant it. Sorry for what? For what you have lost without knowing you lost it. Zarakith did not understand what he meant, but his words made her feel strange, hollow somehow. She left the cell quickly and walked back to her quarters. That night she lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling. Morrison's questions kept running through her mind. She found herself thinking about things she had never thought about before. What had her parents been like? What stories might they have told her? What songs might they have sung? And for the first time in her life, she wondered if there was more to existence than following orders and completing missions. The thought frightened her more than any enemy weapon ever had. The orders came down from Fleet Command 3 days later. Operation Steel Rain would target the human colony world of New Haven. Intelligence reported significant resistance activity there, along with unauthorized military installations. The colony needed immediate pacification. Zarakith read the mission briefing in her ready room. New Haven had a population of 800,000 mostly human families who had fled other Dominion campaigns. They had been building their world for only 12 years, trying to create something new far from the main shipping routes. She found herself wondering what Morrison would say about this mission. The thought surprised her. Why did it matter what a prisoner thought? She was a Dominion officer with clear orders. That should be enough, but the questions Morrison had asked kept bothering her. She pulled up additional files on New Haven, accessing records she had never looked at before. Colony ships full of refugees. Farming settlements, schools and hospitals. Medical research facilities working on cures for diseases that affected multiple species. Nothing in the files mentioned military, installations, or resistance bases. Zarakith frowned and checked the intelligence reports again. They were classified above her level, showing only conclusions without supporting data. She had never questioned intelligence reports before. Intelligence officers were trained specialists who knew their jobs, but Morrison's questions had made her start wondering about things she used to take for granted. 2 hours before the fleet jumped to New Haven, she went to see him again. Commander, Morrison said when she entered his cell. You look troubled. We have received new orders, she said. Your people have built military installations on New Haven. Morrison looked genuinely confused. New Haven? That is impossible. Our intelligence is very good. Commander, I know New Haven. I helped bring 3 refugee ships there 4 years ago. It is a farming colony. They grow food and medicine. The biggest weapon they have is probably a hunting rifle. Intelligence reports confirm military installations. Morrison was quiet for a moment. May I ask what kind of installations? Zaraketh checked her datapad. Weapons manufacturing facilities. Ship construction yards, command and control bunkers. On a world with no heavy industry? Commander, New Haven barely has the infrastructure to build farm equipment. How would they manufacture weapons? The question made her uncomfortable. She had never thought about the practical details before. Orders came down, she followed them. But Morrison was right. How could a farming colony build military equipment? Perhaps they have hidden their capabilities. Perhaps, Morrison agreed. Or perhaps someone wants you to believe they have capabilities they do not possess. Zaraketh stared at him. You are suggesting that Dominion intelligence is wrong? I am suggesting that intelligence can be interpreted in different ways. She left the cell quickly and went back to her quarters. The fleet jumped to New Haven 6 hours later. The colony world was beautiful from orbit. Green continents covered in organized farmland, small cities connected by simple roads, clear blue oceans under white clouds. It looked peaceful and harmless. Beginning sensor sweeps, reported her science officer, looking for military installations. Zaraketh watched the displays as her ship scanned the planet below. Agricultural areas showed up clearly. Cities full of civilian structures, hospitals and schools and community centers. But no weapons factories, no shipyards, no command bunkers. Science officer, confirm your readings. Confirmed, Commander. No military installations detected, no unusual energy signatures. No weapon systems of any kind. The cold feeling returned to Zaraketh's stomach. If there were no military targets, what were they supposed to attack? Fleet Command, this is Sovereign's Pride, she called on the command channel. Initial scans show no military installations on target world. The reply came back immediately. Acknowledged Sovereign's Pride. Intelligence indicates installations are well hidden. Begin standard pacification protocols. Standard pacification protocols meant attacking population centers first to break. Civilian morale, then moving on to infrastructure targets. It was designed to make resistance impossible by destroying the resources needed to support it. Fleet Command, request clarification. What are our primary targets if no military installations can be located? There was a pause before the reply. Primary targets are population centers and industrial facilities. Proceed as ordered. Zaraketh looked at the peaceful world below and felt something break inside her chest. Population centers. That meant cities full of families. Industrial facilities. That meant the farms and food processing plants that kept people alive. Commander, her weapons officer called. Fleet is moving into attack formation, awaiting your orders. She looked around her bridge. Her officers were all ready to carry out their orders. They trusted her to lead them. They trusted the Dominion to give them right and proper missions. Commander? The weapons officer asked again. Zaraketh thought about Morrison's questions. Who decided the galaxy needed Dominion order? Who chose? Which cultures were primitive and needed to be eliminated? Who decided that 800,000 farmers were dangerous enough to require pacification? Begin attack run, she ordered. The next hour was the longest of her life. She watched her weapons destroy a hospital first. The building collapsed in flames, taking 300 patients and medical staff with it. Her tactical officer reported it as a successful strike against a suspected research facility. Then came the schools. 6 different locations across the main continent, each one filled with children who were learning to read and write and dream about their futures. Her weapons officer called them training facilities for resistance operatives. After that came the farms. Endless fields of crops that fed not just New Haven but 12 other colony worlds in the region. The fires could be seen from orbit, great columns of black smoke rising into the atmosphere. Food for millions of people, burning. Excellent work, Fleet Command transmitted. Resistance capabilities significantly reduced. Zaraketh wanted to scream that there had been no resistance capabilities to reduce. But she said nothing and continued to follow her orders. By the time the bombardment ended, New Haven was a broken world. The green farmlands were burning wastelands. The peaceful cities were rubble and smoke. The blue oceans were dark with ash and debris. Final casualty reports coming in, her intelligence officer announced. Estimated 700,000 enemy combatants eliminated. 700,000 enemy combatants. Morrison had been right, the intelligence reports were wrong, or maybe they were lies. Those had not been combatants. Those had been farmers and teachers and children and doctors and all the ordinary people who make a world into a home. Well done, Sovereign's Pride, Fleet Command transmitted. Return to patrol duties. That night, Zaraketh sat in her quarters staring out at the stars. She could not stop thinking about what she had done. For 37 cycles, she had followed orders without question. She had believed that the Dominion brought order to chaos and protected innocent people from suffering, but what she had seen today was not protection. It was murder on a massive scale. She thought about Morrison's wife and daughter, killed when Harmony was pacified. She thought about the Cathari merchant selling the last artifacts of her dead culture. She thought about all the worlds she had helped destroy over the years, and all the people who had died because she followed orders without asking questions. For the first time since she was 5 years old, Zaraketh began to cry. She cried for the children in the schools she had destroyed. She cried for the patients in the hospital she had bombed. She cried for the farmers whose crops would never feed hungry people. She cried for Morrison's family and for her own lost culture, and for all the beautiful things that could have been but never would be, and when she was done crying, she made a decision that would have been impossible just a few days before. She was going to ask Morrison what it meant to choose your own path instead of following orders, even if that path led somewhere she had never imagined going. Morrison knew something had changed the moment Zaraketh entered his cell. Her shoulders were different, less rigid. Her eyes looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. "You saw what happened at New Haven," he said quietly. It was not a question. Somehow, he already knew. Zaraketh sat down on the small chair across from his bunk and looked at her hands. "There were no military installations," she said. No weapons factories, no resistance bases, no enemy combatants, just people trying to live their lives." Zaraketh looked up at him. "How did you know?" Morrison was quiet for a moment. "Because I have seen this pattern before. Many times. The Dominion does not fight military enemies, Commander. It destroys civilizations that refuse to surrender their freedom. Then why do the intelligence reports always claim otherwise? Because it is easier to kill people if you can pretend they are dangerous." The words hit her like physical blows. She had participated in dozens of operations like New Haven. Hundreds of thousands of people had died because she followed orders that were based on lies. "I have been a fool," she said. "No," Morrison replied gently. "You have been a soldier doing what soldiers are trained to do. The question is what you choose to do now that you know the truth." Before Zaraketh could answer, her communication device chirped. She touched the control and Lieutenant Veltar's voice filled the cell. "Commander, you are needed on the bridge immediately. Priority orders from Fleet Command." She looked at Morrison, then stood up. "We will continue this conversation later." "I hope so," he said, on the bridge Veltar handed her a sealed data pad with the Dominion's highest security markings. She read the orders twice to make sure she understood them correctly. "When did this arrive?" she asked. 10 minutes ago, Commander. Fleet Command is waiting for confirmation." Zaraketh stared at the orders. Morrison and his 2 crew members were to be executed within 24 hours. The execution was to be recorded and broadcast across human space as a warning to other resistance fighters. She thought about Morrison's calm questions and patient explanations. She thought about his wife and daughter, killed for the crime of wanting to live free. She thought about the Cathari merchant with her tears and her lost culture. "Commander?" Veltar asked. "Shall I acknowledge receipt of orders?" Zaraketh looked around her bridge. Her crew was watching her, waiting for her decision. They trusted her to do the right thing. They had always trusted her to follow orders and complete missions. But what if the orders were wrong? What if completing the mission meant doing something evil? "Commander?" She made her decision. "Acknowledge receipt," she told Veltar. "But tell Fleet Command that execution will be delayed 24 hours due to technical difficulties with the recording equipment." It was a lie, but it would buy her time to think. That evening she went back to Morrison's cell. She dismissed the guards and entered alone. "You have received orders to kill me," Morrison said. It was not a question. "How do you know? Your expression?" "Also, killing prisoners is what the Dominion does." Zaraketh sat down on the chair again. "The execution is to be broadcast to your people as a warning." Morrison nodded as if this was perfectly reasonable. "And you are troubled by this order?" "Yes, why?" She had been asking herself the same question. "Because you are not a combatant. Because your only crime was bringing medical supplies to refugees. Because executing you will not make the galaxy safer or more orderly." "Those are good reasons," Morrison said. "But I suspect there is another reason as well." "What do you mean?" Morrison looked at her carefully. "You are beginning to understand that following orders and doing the right thing are not always the same." The words crystallized something she had been feeling since New Haven, all her life. She had believed that Dominion orders were automatically right because they came from legitimate authority. The possibility that authority could be wrong had never occurred to her. "What happens if I refuse to carry out the execution?" "You will be arrested, tried for treason, and probably executed yourself." "And if I carry it out?" Morrison smiled sadly. "Then you become someone you will not be able to live with." They sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Morrison spoke again. "Commander, may I ask you something?" "Yes. If you could choose any life for yourself without considering duty or orders or expectations, what would you choose?" The question surprised her. No one had ever asked her what she wanted. Cathari warriors did not get to want things. They had duties and responsibilities and nothing else. "I do not know," she said honestly. Double quotes, think about it. "If you could go anywhere, do anything, be anyone, what would make you happy?" Zaraketh tried to imagine a life without military service. It was almost impossible. "I have never thought about happiness. Try now." She closed her eyes and tried to picture herself somewhere other than a warship. Images came slowly, uncertain and strange. A quiet place with growing things. Books to read. Music to listen to. Time to think about questions that mattered. "I think I would like to learn things," she said finally. "Not tactical information or weapon specifications, real things. History and art and science? I would like to understand how worlds work when they are not being conquered." Morrison smiled. "That sounds like a good life." "It sounds like an impossible life. Only if you choose to keep following orders that lead you away from it." Zaraketh opened her eyes and looked at him. "You are asking me to betray everything." "I have ever been—" "No," Morrison said quietly. "I am asking you to become everything you could be." She left the cell without another word and went to her ready room. For the next 12 hours, she sat at her desk staring at the execution orders. She thought about 37 cycles of unquestioning service. She thought about New Haven burning and 700,000 dead civilians. She thought about all the other worlds she had helped destroy and all the people who had died because she followed orders without asking if they were right. She thought about Morrison's questions and the life she might have if she stopped being afraid to make her own choices. When Lieutenant Veltar came to ask about the execution schedule, she was ready with her answer. "Delay the execution order," she said. Veltar looked confused. "Commander? I am releasing the prisoners. Prepare a shuttle for immediate departure." "Commander, I do not understand." Our orders are wrong," Zaraketh said. She stood up and looked at her young officer. "Lieutenant, how many civilian casualties did we cause at New Haven?" "Intelligence reports estimate 700,000 enemy combatants eliminated." "They were not combatants, Veltar. They were farmers and teachers and children. We murdered 700,000 innocent people because we followed orders without asking questions." Veltar stared at her. "Commander, these thoughts are dangerous. Perhaps you should speak with the ship's counselor." Zaraketh almost smiled. Even now, faced with the truth, her officer's first instinct was to find someone who would help her stop thinking forbidden thoughts. "No counselor can fix what I have." "Learned," she said. "Prepare that shuttle." "I cannot allow you to release the prisoners, Commander. I am relieving you of duty pending psychological evaluation. Veltar reached for his sidearm. Zaraketh moved faster, drawing her own weapon and pointing it at his chest. I am still your commanding officer, Lieutenant. You will follow my orders, or you will be confined to quarters. For a long moment, they stared at each other across her ready room. Finally, Veltar slowly removed his hand from his weapon. Yes, Commander, I will prepare the shuttle. An hour later, Zaraketh stood in the shuttle bay watching Morrison and his crew prepare for departure. She had given them navigation data for safe passage through Dominion space and intelligence about upcoming military operations against human colonies. This is treason, she said. Yes, Morrison agreed. How does it feel? She thought about it carefully. Terrifying and right. Morrison nodded. Those two feelings often go together. He paused at the shuttle entrance. What will you do now? Zaraketh looked around her ship. Soon her crew would realize what she had done. Fleet Command would order her arrest? Her life as a Dominion officer was over. I do not know, she said. But for the first time in my life, that does not frighten me, Morrison smiled. Then you are already free. As she watched the shuttle disappear into the stars, Zaraketh realized he was right. She had spent 37 cycles following orders and serving an empire built on lies and murder. Now she was going to find out what it meant to serve something worth believing in, even if she had to discover what that was one choice at a time. 6 months had passed since Zaraketh released Morrison and his crew. 6 months since she destroyed her career and became a traitor to everything she had once believed. 6 months of running from Dominion pursuit ships and learning what it meant to make choices based on conscience instead of orders. She stood on the bridge of the human ship Liberty's Edge, watching a Dominion patrol fleet search the asteroid field where they were hiding. The human vessels were smaller and faster than Dominion warships, but they could not win direct battles. Instead, they fought with stealth and cunning and knowledge of their enemies' weaknesses, knowledge that Zaraketh provided. How many ships? Asked Captain Amy Rodriguez, the human commander who had taken her in when she first contacted the Resistance. 12 heavy cruisers and 6 destroyers, Zaraketh replied, reading the sensor displays. Standard search pattern Delta 7. They will find us in approximately 40 minutes if we remain here. Rodriguez nodded. She was younger than Morrison, but had the same calm confidence that Zaraketh remembered from their first meeting. Recommendations? Zaraketh studied the tactical display. If we move to grid 7 Alpha 9, their sensors will not penetrate the iron deposits in those asteroids. We can wait there until they move on. Do it, Rodriguez ordered. The Liberty's Edge moved silently between the floating rocks, using gravity fields to avoid thruster emissions that might show up on Dominion sensors. Zaraketh watched the maneuver with professional appreciation. Human. Pilots were creative in ways that Dominion training never encouraged. As they settled into their hiding place, Rodriguez turned to her. Any word from the intelligence package you sent to Morrison? He confirmed receipt 3 days ago. The information about Dominion supply routes should help protect the Kepler colonies from the next attack, Rodriguez smiled. Good work. How many people do you think that will save? Zaraketh had done the calculations. If they use the information properly, perhaps 50,000 civilians. 50,000 people who get to go home to their families tonight because of what you chose to do. The words still felt strange to hear. For 37 cycles, success had been measured in enemies killed and objectives captured. Now she measured success in lives saved and homes protected. A communication signal came through on their encrypted channel. Rodriguez accepted the call and Morrison's face appeared on the main screen. Amy, Zaraketh, good to see you both, he said. I have news about our special project. The special project was something they had been working on for 3 months. Using Zaraketh's knowledge of Dominion military psychology and Morrison's understanding of human motivation, they had created information packages designed to make other Dominion soldiers start asking the same questions that had changed her. How many responses so far? Rodriguez asked. Morrison's smile was tired but hopeful. 17 confirmed contacts. 12 Kefari, 3 Zephyrian, 2 Tarkonian. All of them military officers who have started questioning their orders. Zaraketh felt something warm in her chest. Other soldiers were beginning to wake up. Other people were starting to choose conscience over blind obedience. Any defections yet? 2 so far. A Cathari destroyer captain named Korthaval and a Tarkonian intelligence officer named Sixara. Both of them cited your example as inspiration for their decision, her example. Zaraketh had never thought of herself as someone others might follow. She had always been a follower herself, taking orders and completing missions. But apparently, choosing to think for herself had made her into something she had never expected to become, a leader. There is more news, Morrison continued. We have located a Dominion prison facility in the Arcturus system. Intelligence suggests they are holding captured resistance fighters there, along with civilians from recent pacification operations. Rodriguez leaned forward. How many prisoners? Approximately 800. Men, women, children from a dozen. Different worlds. Zaraketh studied the star charts. Arcturus system has heavy defenses. 3 orbital battle platforms, constant patrol coverage, automated weapon systems. A rescue operation would be extremely dangerous. But possible? Rodriguez asked. Zaraketh thought about it carefully. She knew Dominion defensive doctrine better than anyone in the Resistance. She knew their patrol schedules, their response protocols, their tactical weaknesses. Possible, yes. But it would require precise timing and someone with detailed knowledge of Dominion security procedures. Someone like you. The implications were clear. If they attempted this rescue, Zaraketh would have to lead it. She would have to take direct action against her former comrades, fight against soldiers she might have served with in the past. She thought about the 800 prisoners sitting in Dominion cells. Some of them were probably resistance fighters who had made the same choice she had made. Others were likely civilians whose only crime was being in the wrong place when the Dominion decided their world needed pacification. People like Morrison's wife and daughter. People like the farmers on New Haven. People who deserved a chance to go home to their families. I will do it, she said. The mission took 2 weeks to plan and 3 days to execute. Zaraketh led a mixed force of human Cathari and Tarkonian volunteers in a coordinated strike against the prison facility. They used her knowledge of Dominion procedures to infiltrate the security systems and disable the defensive platforms. The hardest part was not the fighting. The hardest part was seeing her former comrades face to face and having to choose between them and the innocent people they were guarding when she stunned Lieutenant Veltar during the assault on the command center. She felt something break inside her chest. He had been her officer, someone who had trusted her and followed her orders. Now she was his enemy, but when she saw the children in the prison cells, some of them barely old enough to walk, she knew she had made the right choice. These little ones had never threatened anyone. Their only crime was belonging to species that refused to surrender their freedom to the Dominion. The rescue was successful. All 800 prisoners were freed and transported to safe locations throughout human space. 17 resistance fighters chose to join the growing rebellion, including 3 former Dominion soldiers who had been captured during previous operations. Afterward, Zaraketh stood in the observation lounge of the Liberty's Edge, watching the freed prisoners board transport ships. Children played in the corridors while their parents cried tears of joy. Families that had been separated were reuniting. People who had given up hope were learning to dream again. Morrison found her there an hour later. Regrets? He asked her. She thought about it honestly. About leaving the Dominion? No. About the soldiers I had to fight? Yes, they are not evil people. They are just people who have never been allowed to ask questions, like you were 6 months ago. Yes, Morrison stood beside her at the observation window. Do you know what I see when I look at you now? A traitor to my own species? No, Morrison said quietly. I see someone who chose to serve something larger than herself. Someone who decided that protecting innocent lives was more important than following orders. Someone who discovered what real loyalty means. Zaraketh looked at the families in the corridor below. A small human child was teaching a young Cathari how to play a clapping game. Their parents watched and smiled, former enemies finding common ground in their love for their children. Real loyalty, she repeated, loyalty to your own conscience. Loyalty to the principle that every sentient being deserves freedom and dignity. Loyalty to the idea that following orders is only valuable when those orders serve a worthy cause. She thought about her 37 cycles of service to the Dominion. She had been loyal, yes, but it had been the loyalty of a tool that obeys without thinking. Now she understood the difference between obedience and true service. I spend most of my life serving an empire built on fear and control, she said. Now I serve something better. What do you serve now? Zaraketh watched the children playing their game, laughing together despite the differences in their species and cultures. She thought about the soldiers who were beginning to question their orders because of information she had provided. She thought about all the people who might live free because someone had finally chosen to stand up for what was right instead of what was ordered. Hope, she said. I serve hope, Morrison smiled. That is the best kind of loyalty there is. As the transport ships departed for their various destinations, carrying their precious cargo of freed prisoners toward new lives and new possibilities, Zaraketh made herself a promise. She would continue to fight against the Dominion's tyranny. She would continue to help other soldiers discover the courage to think for themselves. She would continue to serve the cause of freedom, not because someone ordered her to, but because she had chosen it for herself. Her loyalty had never shaken during all her years of military service. But that loyalty had been given to the wrong cause. Now she understood the difference between blind obedience and conscious choice, and she would never go back to being a tool in someone else's hands again.